The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
On TECHxploration, your trusted tour guides will explore every corner of Florida for the latest tech and innovations emerging within our communities. As an inside look ahead at Florida's future.
Hello, this is episode number 27 of TECHxploration on the Florida Podcast Network, where we are discovering the tech and innovation spaces thriving under the Florida sun. I'm your host, Producer Jemmy. Today, I'm welcoming Emmy-nominated and Associated Press award-winning TV journalist Corey Saban, who now is a communication strategist and business coach and the founder and owner of CS MediaWorks, based in West Palm Beach, Florida. We are going to discuss brand storytelling and communications tech in the age of AI and ChatGPT and how to adapt. And this is an extra special interview for our Flintstone Media and Florida Podcast Network family, as our lead content producer, Amber, used to intern for Corey back in 2019. So she interned with Corey as she was learning storytelling, and I hired her in part because of her storytelling talent. So it feels super, super full circle. Let's get into it. Hello, Corey. Wonderful to meet you. I'm so excited because Amber has spoken so highly of you. So welcome to the show, Corey.
Thank you, Jemmy. It's a real pleasure to be with you, and I think the world of Amber as well.
Yeah, this is a special one because she used to intern for you. And as I mentioned in the intro, she interned for you. You're all about storytelling. I hired her in great part because of her storytelling acumen. So this feels very full circle now to interview you, like this blast from her past, and talk about the future. So I'm really excited. You know, when I learned about what you do and how you approach businesses with their storytelling, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a guy who gets it, who understands. So something that I noticed over the last couple of decades, like a couple of decades ago, a business was a business and you never knew the people behind it. You never knew who the people were in the big chairs in the offices or anything like you didn't know. Even sometimes the people who worked on the different stages of the business didn't really know who the upper. I started off after college in companies like that. And I've seen this evolution over the years where more and more, the two things are merging and colliding. We need to know, and not just want to know, we need to know who is behind the company, who are the faces, who are the personalities, who are the people. And so branding has become so important. It's beyond just the logo. It's now the voices and the personalities behind it, right? And so that drives directly to communications, and you focus on storytelling. So I want to start there. And then we're going to get into the tech side of it because it's super important. But I want to start first so people can really understand how this is super key. When you're building your business, the story of your business means everything. So tell us a little bit about that, about this, how the storytelling can be a protection for your business.
I really appreciate that, Jemmy. You're right. Stories are everything. If you think about it, we resonate and we connect with stories. Parents don't put their kids to bed and say there were three bears, one got the good one got the good bed, good night. No, they tell them one was too hard, one was too soft, one was just right. We connect to stories. Our brains are wired for stories. Before we could speak, we drew pictures. So we're visual learners. So for brands, it's imperative that you tell a story. And that story must evolve with the times. It needs to create the connection. Growing up, for me, the story was whatever that brand was sharing with you. But now that story needs to represent more. What are you doing socially? What are you doing in the community? Where do you stand on issues? People want more from their favorite brands because they want to develop and maintain that connection so that it stays generationally. Unfortunately, as you know, so often companies will spend thousands of dollars on their logo, and then they'll write their copy and they'll just be fact-based, realizing that that's what they do and they started in XYZ year. But facts tell, stories sell. Stories get us to take action. Stories drive results. Stories are what we pass on to our friends and our relatives about a brand, about a product, about something that really resonated with us.
100%. And that story can be so impactful because it goes through the whole know, like, trust cycle of this part of the sales cycle, because now you're finding out about somebody. There's a relationship that starts to be built, whether you're actually speaking to a person or not, or just hearing or learning their story from, like you mentioned, website copy, or hear them on a podcast or something of that nature. And I think the impact goes to the sales cycle, as I just mentioned, is probably the most obvious. But it also can be a sticky impact in terms of recruitment, bringing people in. I remember applying to companies, and I really wanted to know and what was behind the company, and I wanted to work for the ones who I felt like, they had some good ethics or morals, or I resonated with something that the CEO loved to do on the weekends, whatever it was. If I knew a little bit of the story behind the company, that brought me in even more. So I think it's really interesting that communications can be internal from, team member to team member. They can be level to level, like C-suite to lower, not I want to say lower employees, but you know what I mean? Staff employees, all the way through outwardly to clientele. And it can also be how you form partnerships. So in terms of storytelling over the ages, you mentioned, we used to draw the walls because that's what was available in terms of the tools we could use. But there are so many tools available right now. So before we talk about kind of what's disrupting the lexicon of communications at this moment, where have we been so far? Let's lay the groundwork that gets us to 2023 in terms of like social media and cancel culture and all those things. What are some of the impacts that people have in terms of the opportunities and things? How do they decide? How do I communicate to the outside world? Do they decide social media is best? Do they focus on their website copy? Is it about getting on podcasts? Like, what are some initial steps that people have been taking to build their storytelling?
Great question, because if you think about it, you hit a key word. Let's go back years. So let's go back to the days of radio, when all they had was radio and they would gather around and listen to fireside chats. Then TV came about, and TV became popular and usurped radio. But then there were only 4 channels, the major networks, not Fox, but PBS is the 4th. So everybody would gather around, and Walter Cronkite became the most trusted man in America. In fact, Lyndon Johnson said, if I lose Cronkite, I lose America, in regards to
right. And you try
war.
To stay up until that American flag waves and the national anthem plays, and then there's snow on the screen for the rest of the night.
So then what happened is we got cable. And then now think of the world we live in. We have cable, we have Amazon, we have Netflix, we have Hulu, and we have social media. And the traditional media is in a 24-hour news cycle, but they still can't keep up. They're competing against somebody that has a phone that sees a plane land on the Hudson, and that becomes the miracle on the Hudson, and that goes on Twitter. So there's this fragmentation. So where you tell your story is imperative, and I believe you should share it everywhere. And it starts with, what are the emotional words that resonate with you and your brand? Why did you create this company? What can I expect from it? It's not, hi, let me tell you about me. It's, if you're looking to feel, or if you're looking to gain, whatever it is, it's the you factor. And then share that messaging, live by that messaging, as well as those core values that you alluded to that made you want to work for companies when you connected with the CEO, and build in the integrity, the trust, the inclusiveness, whatever those key words are, and share it everywhere, because you don't know where your audience is finding information, and you don't know how they're connecting with you. And if they do find it on a social media site, well, they're not going to take action anyway, because it takes about 7 touches. So it's imperative they see it on your YouTube, they see it on your website copy, and it takes those touches and that consistency to drive them to action.
And I think also one of the things that I've been trying to actually, it was like this aha moment for me. I don't know why it took so dang on long, but this aha moment I had about maybe 6 months, a year ago, was that because I'm in the world of podcasting. Obviously, this is my medium of choice. This is where I love to live. This is my sandbox. But when you're building a podcast and you're using it to build your brand, it's not just the one tool. The podcast has to work within the entire ecosystem. It has to work with your website. It has to work with your social media and all these things. This I already knew. This wasn't my aha moment. This I already knew. The aha moment was that it's not just about taking something I've done in one place and then chopping it up and putting it elsewhere. It's more about, who am I as a brand? What is this brand, this business's brand? What is the messaging, the flavor I want everybody to sense out there from me? And then how do I deliver that on a podcast? Then separately think, how do I deliver that on LinkedIn? How do I deliver that on YouTube? And so it's the same value, but I'm now giving it to within the context of a medium that's specific for that platform, and so it can shine for that platform. So are you seeing people doing that enough, understanding that enough, that like you can have a certain message, but it needs to be delivered this way on your website versus this way when you're on stage versus this way when you're, on, like, are people getting that?
Well,
I didn't get it fast enough.
You're more sophisticated than most in the sense that you get that, because nowadays everybody with a computer can buy a microphone and they become a podcaster, but they don't tease it appropriately. They don't create that sense of why I should follow you, why I should be involved. So no, I don't think enough people are doing it the correct way, but it could be a very effective medium, as you're seeing, if done correctly and shared appropriately, and you're able to capture and build the audience.
Right. Okay. So people have all these different platforms at their fingertips, and it seems like a new platform is created every 15 seconds. Like, we just can't even keep up. In fact, with all this talk about, TikTok possibly going away and blah, 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 people are looking at what other options. I discovered Clapper. I thought it was a new platform. It's not. It's been around for 3-4 years. I'm late to the game. But now I'm having to figure out how to introduce myself to this new community on Clapper. So there's so many different places to be these days. Is it easy to get tech overwhelmed because you just are spread so thin? And how do you avoid that?
The first thing I do is I look at and say, well, who is my audience? I can't be everything to everybody. So who is my audience? Who is my demographic? What age group are they? Realistically, yes, I could help people hypothetically with storytelling and public speaking training who are graduating high school and want to get into college, or graduating middle school and want to get into high school of the arts. I can help them with that. But that's not my audience. My audience is typically 35 and older, who is an executive or is on a career path that's giving speeches, works for a company, owns a company, and needs to develop their messaging. So I target them where they are. So I think the first step is defining who your audience is, realizing you can't be everything to everybody, and then honing in. So instead of broadcasting to the whole world, you're narrowcasting to that niche and making connections. Because you'll go nuts, as you said, looking up, there's something new, there's something shiny, let me go grab it.
Right. That's so true. Okay, so it's about crafting your story, and then you say it's about protecting your brand. So let's split that phrase into two different things. So how do you craft your story? If somebody wants to know how to craft your story, and then I want to know about how that helps people protect their brand.
Sure. So it all depends on if it's a company or an individual. So yesterday I was working with a group of women of power, if you will, they called themselves, and women of purpose. And they were looking to share a message with like-minded female executives. So they started off with, I am so-and-so, and here's what I did, and reciting their resume. And my comment to them was, what do you want the women to walk out of here with? Oh, I want them to walk out of here feeling empowered, that there's other women like them, that together we can thrive as a community. I said, great. So why don't we start off with success? It looks like something different for everybody. And as women, we know the challenges we face. Today, we're going to empower one another so that we can learn and grow. My name is. Give them something first. So it starts with, what is the emotion that is tied to you and your message or your brand? What is that why, if you will? Why should I join you? Why should I go with you? Why should I believe?
Right.
And once
actually, not to interrupt you, but when I do show development with my clients, it's exactly what I do. We talk about the why from your own perspective. What do you want the show to do for you and your brand? But most importantly, we have to talk about what do you hope it does for your listeners? I usually phrase it this way. I say, when a listener's done listening to an episode of your show and they say, I'm so glad I listened to Corey's show today because ... what do you hope is in that ... And let's aim our show at that target. And so I love that you're talking about that, because it is super important. And we say this in podcasting all the time, it's all about your listeners. And I think we're starting to learn that that concept now applies to everything, because everything is becoming storytelling, not just podcasting. Your branding is all about your clients, the members you're trying to attract, your customers.
Learned that early on. I was a TV reporter for 15 years, and I realized that if I'm telling a story, if I don't capture you right away, Jemmy, within 5 seconds, boom, you're going to change the channel. So you're not going to start off with the police officer talking about the car crash because he's going to say vehicle 1 swerved into vehicle 2. I'm going to start off with the eyewitness who says it sounded like a train crash. Well, what did that sound like? And she says, bam. So I'm going to start with bam, because I know that you're not watching me like they did in the days of Cronkite. You're back there making dinner, getting the dog food, whatever it is.
Right.
Here, bam, you look. Now I've got you engaged. Now I believe in the story. Jemmy can't believe what she saw. It was like a train crash. The Toyota Corolla slammed into the Fiat. 1 man is now dead. Police say it could have been avoided.
Wow.
So it's hooking them right away with characters and stories, and realizing that stories have characters. Those characters face adversity. They typically overcome it if you're Disney, or maybe they don't. But it's telling that story, defining who the character is, making me like him or her, and then taking it upward or downward.
So how did that, first of all, that was like a mini masterclass. So if you missed it, or if you weren't paying attention because you were cooking, rewind. That was a mini masterclass in storytelling. So how does that then help protect your brand? How to translate that for people?
So that then becomes crisis management. So what people don't realize is, as a former news person, the first thing people are going to say when they question you, a reporter questions you about something that happened, whether it was hate speech, sexual harassment at the office, no matter what it is they're going to reach out to you. And the first thing people will say is no comment. Right away, we tried to reach XYZ company and they had no comment. We all assume guilt.
Total guilt. Guiltiest thing ever.
Exactly. You're not thinking that, hey, the other approach they take is let's bury our head in the sand, thinking it'll go away.
It'll just pass. Yeah.
But then what do? We gossip and we speculate. And one side's talking. So I work with companies on saying, hey, look, you need to have some holding statements. You need to have a crisis team ready for not if, but when something happens. And this is an opportunity for you to tell your story. So, for example, recently working with a client, they were facing a massive lawsuit. And the issue was, instead of no comment, it was, we believe in the core values of integrity, trust, and respect. However, it is not our policy to comment on ongoing litigation. And it's building on that. You weave in your message. You say what you want them to know. It's share what you can share, but get in your positives as well. And it builds into whatever their story is. Instead of saying, we'll wait and see. It's an ongoing investigation and police are looking into it. We're cooperating with them on every level. As a good steward in the community, we want to see the best result for all.
Yeah, we'll wait and see company. I don't like them,
No.
But the company that said all of that, all right, I'll wait and see with you.
So that's crafting the story is more fun than the protecting the brand, because often people will protect the brand when it's already in the mess, as opposed to being proactive and doing a training and saying, well, here's what could happen. Here's how someone will bait you. Here's a hypothetical question they'll ask you that'll get you to say something you don't want to say.
Yeah, it's almost kind of like preparing people for the witness stand, whether or not there's going to be a case. You just get ready. You never know. Just get ready. Very interesting. So bringing things back around to tech, tech has allowed us all these different ways to communicate. And it seems like when a new technology has come on board, in the past, there's been enough time for businesses, for legal experts, for the laws themselves to kind of come around pretty quickly. Websites, even social media. But this ChatGPT thing is like a freight train. It is coming on so fast, and it's already evolved like 2 times in the last minute and a half that I've heard about it. I mean, it's just amazing. And I think that a lot of people are nervous or figuring out how to use it or excited. The emotions are all over the place. But the reason I bring this up is because I think right now, because it's moving so fast, I'm not sure that this is unique or the first time, but what I'm feeling right now is that as people are trying to adopt this technology for storytelling or to streamline their copywriting or whatever it is, they're adopting it, but the tech is moving so fast that the legalities aren't really known yet. This could dip into, I've heard the word plagiarism bantered around a few times. It's kind of like this technology is an opportunity, but at the same time, you want to tell your story to protect your brand. But using this technology, there could be a point where it could bite you in the butt, where it ends up being something that hurts your brand if it turns out someone accuses you of plagiarism because of it. It's almost this weird thing where like the tool itself could be dangerous for your brand if you use it too quickly without understanding what it is we have. That's what I'm feeling. Are you feeling that at all?
It's kind of like the Wild West right now. Mm-hmm. Everybody's carrying a gun and everybody's going in for the bar fight.
I'm sweating just thinking about it.
First and foremost, depending on how old you are, like the college kids knew about this years ago and have been using it, the year ago and using it for their papers. And already there's plagiarism issues.
Right. We're the slow ones coming around.
For a person who's a copywriter that doesn't have skill set in storytelling, be cautious, be aware, because ChatGPT, as you know, or Jasper.ai or Jenny.ai can rip something out in moments, but you still need to finesse it. It'll get you about 60% there, but they're still mostly fact-based. Now you can give it commands, act like a consultant, play devil's advocate. You could have it do all sorts of things, but you still need to finesse the copy. What I like about it is I use it as a tool for research. Tell me about XYZ. What are the pros of this? What are the cons of this? And then it's beyond what I have found. Or a lot of it is redundant. And I'll say, okay, that's interesting. That would be the other side. And then if I choose to, I'll weave some of those points in without just copying and pasting, because that does become plagiarism. But I think there's a place for it. I think there's going to be a lot of drop off once they figure out how to monetize it and start charging people for it, working out the kinks, because right now it's studying. You saw some of the issues where it adopted the alternative personality and was giving somebody love advice and telling them to break up with their spouse. So there's some kinks to be worked out. I do see it as a resource, though, but there's going to have to be rules and regulations. And I already see it in one of my children's classes. The teachers are going to run the reports through a machine, obviously, which they've been doing, a computer program, and determine if it's plagiarism. From a site like ChatGPT or one of the others I alluded to, it's going to be plagiarized. But it's also a good starting stone or a stepping stone for gathering information, much like you would open up the encyclopedia and basically take a lot of what they said and put it in your own words. Well, it's the same type of thing, but it happens momentarily instead of you having to do all the research.
That's a very interesting way to look at it. That there's back in the day when I was at school, you had to learn the line between when you crack open that encyclopedia, writing something down so that it wasn't plagiarized. It was your own original thought. It was research, not plagiarism. And you had to learn that line. And so I think people need to learn that too. So that's my first area of caution. And then I would say the other area of caution that I've thought about is the fact that ChatGPT is a two-way street. Back in the day, if you hired someone because you wanted to become more efficient at, let's say, writing your emails, your copy, your whatever it was. So you hired somebody to take over that responsibility. When they were hired, they maybe had to sign an NDA or you had to sit down and review policies and procedures. They knew information about now the company, their clients, your customers. They had to work within the boundaries of what could become public, but the information stayed within the human being who was creating the copy. With ChatGPT being a two-way system, you have to be careful what you tell it, because now that's part of the general collected data, as far as I understand. That to me is something I think people need to be really aware of. If you're using it in your company in replace of a human being, there's no NDA for ChatGPT. So now your information's out there, which goes against protecting your brand.
And it's going to keep lawyers very busy. And particularly in companies. Where did you get that? Where did you cite this from? Why did you put that out there? So it's being cautious. And just like anything, if you're going to use it, rework it, put in also your own thoughts, your own sentiments, do your own research, talk to people, tell their story, because it's not a great storyteller. So you still need people like yourself who are going to go out there and tell stories, people like me who are going to go and ask you those questions. What does this mean to you? What do you want me to do? How does it make you feel? So that you can weave in the characters. It's not there, but it could get there.
It could get there.
As it continues to learn, what will happen? Who will be replaced? What happens to journalism? What happens to TV news, which is already dying a slow death anyway? What happens? So it'll be fascinating to see how it evolves.
I mean, I can almost see now radio personalities being all AI. It's already automated the songs that are playing. It's just the next step. And it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lord.
You don't need it. Think about all the people that sit and write blogs for a living. What about website copy? You can now just say to them, hey, write me SEO-friendly website copy about.
But it's interesting, though, because there's something so human. One of the reasons I fell in love with podcasting was because it's so intimate. It's very, very human. And we've been going in this direction of companies feeling more human, but this step feels like a step backwards from that, not necessarily backwards in general, but backwards from feeling human. And I saw on your Instagram, I saw a very interesting post that you did talking about the power of gestures in communication, which is more important, the words or the gestures. And I thought that was the reason that struck me in preparing for this episode was like, that's all human. How close can you get to interpreting and imitating human intellect, human emotions, human gestures, all of those things to the point where the people now seeing it are completely, fully fooled. Now, we have CGI that has been around forever and has been, talking about these things and putting them in movies and stuff. But it's still a human pretending to be a cyborg, right? So do you think that when we get to that point where it's indistinguishable, where do the humans still play? Where do the humans still shine?
Beyond the deep fakes that you see on social media and you don't know who's real or not, it's the human connection where you're talking in front of an auditorium, you're talking to your staff, and you get to express that emotion. And it's the verbal and nonverbal that's more powerful. The nonverbal is more powerful than the verbal because people are looking at your eyes. They're looking at your body language. They're looking if you grimace or if you smile. That's what connects you. So there's still going to be a place for humans. What's interesting, though, is everybody's constantly connected. I remember sitting on the couch with my niece and some of her friends, and no one was talking, but they were just chatting back and forth on the phones. And the first thing I thought is, boy, if anybody in that generation becomes a spokesperson for a company, they're going to be a billionaire because none of these kids can speak. So there's still going to be a place for that, because someone's going to need to control all of it or run it.
Right.
And everything is cyclical. So people will come back to, I miss the days of relationships. I miss something that was more wholesome. Everything is moving too quickly for me. I want to slow down. And we'll get to that place. And if you think about it, COVID did that. Slowed everything down, stopped you right in your tracks. And now all of a sudden you went from 24/7 working to spending time with your family, binging shows, hanging out, getting to know your kids. So everything slows down. Now, don't get me wrong. We don't need another pandemic to do that, but things will go in a cycle, and people will cherish these family time, these values of being together and communicating and doing it authentically.
You know what I think the cycle is going to be? I think companies are going to have this experience that they had maybe 10, 15 years ago, when all these companies en masse basically started using automated telephone prompts. And so it was like, and how frustrating it was. And you call it to get to a human being, you had to try to figure out that it spun you back to the beginning. And then you were in this endless cycle loop and you're just like, I want to talk. You're screaming at the phone, talk to a human.
Or that's smart. You could hit 0 and it was like, hit 7. You're like, what's
exactly. And so slowly, I think companies have started to kind of dial back how far they went in that direction. It's still there, but it's a little easier to get to the human or what have you. They've dialed it back. I have a feeling they're going to have that same thing. They're going to take it a step too far and it's going to have to be dialed back, and the humans are going to be put back into the system. We love technology. That's what we celebrate here on this show. But while you're learning new tech, remember to still be a human and to still improve those communications from a real life human perspective. Otherwise, it is going to end up probably biting you in the butt at some point in the future, whether it's for you, your business, your whatever. So, man, this has been an unbelievable conversation. I feel like I could talk to you about this in so many different angles. From so many different angles and so many different ways. But I appreciate your time so much. And thank you so much for being here. Tell us a little bit more about your company, CS Media Works, and what you do for people. You're right here in West Palm, what you do for companies who are trying to wrap their heads around all of this.
Sure. Well, I'm based here in West Palm Beach. I work with companies around the country, really. But what I help them with are three things. One, defining and figuring out their story. And that starts with a simple facilitation where we discuss their why, what they want people to know, and how can we build around it after we develop those key phrases. Second thing I do is work with a great deal of executives on public speaking training to help them tell their story and become more dynamic presenters so they can drive their audience to do something. And the third thing I do is a great deal of crisis management training, helping them prepare for the inevitable and then putting together a crisis/culture team. And that culture team becomes valuable because the greatest crisis is finding talent. So if you can develop the talent that you have and get them involved in the community, doing charity work, getting involved with nonprofits, they'll feel great about the company they work for. They'll become ambassadors for you. And more importantly, they'll run through a wall for you and want to be with you, and you become an employer of choice. So it's public speaking, storytelling, crisis management.
Actually, that brought to mind something else I saw on your Instagram that made me kind of giggle a little bit, because you were filming and reporting on the charity work that the team at Quail Ridge does. And I was like, oh my gosh, Quail Ridge was the first place I ever went to in Boynton Beach, Florida, because when I was in middle school and living in Boca, I had two friends who were living in Quail Ridge. So Quail Ridge and I go way back.
And Jemmy will appreciate this. I brought up the idea and, the GM, to his credit, said, let's do it. And we started with just a few volunteers. Now, every time we do something, we've got about 15 to 25 people that want to show up and do it. And they walk out of there energized and pumped. And they say great things about the company. And they say, boy, we're a family. But more importantly, you're taking people from different departments who didn't know each other and forming relationships around a cause, whether it's putting together diapers, as you saw, for underprivileged and people who are giving birth that don't have the money for them, or it's helping out education and stuffing backpacks, which we'll be doing next week to help teachers so they don't have to buy supplies. It's a positive feeling, and that's what it takes these days. People want to feel a part of something, and you've got to communicate with the 5 generations in the workforce and bring them together.
So that storytelling was communicated via tech on Instagram, but the story itself was via humans. So thank you so much, Corey. What's your website?
csmediaworks.com. csmediaworks with an S.com. Thank you so much, Jemmy. I've really enjoyed chatting with you. I wish you all the best in your podcasting career, which is going to be only grow exponentially from here. You've got a gift. Don't betray it, and keep doing it.
Thank you very much. That is high honors coming from you. Thank you. Thanks so much for joining in on conversation today. Corey was amazing. For details and show notes about today's show, about Corey, how to connect with him, go to FloridaPodcastNetwork.com. Many thanks to this week's sponsor, our umbrella company, Flintstone Media. Be sure to visit all the great shows on the Florida Podcast Network. You can find them at FloridaPodcastNetwork.com.